Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm having a conversation that I've been pushing off having for a while, for two reasons. Although before we get to that, you've probably seen from the title already, this is a video about AI art, and more specifically, how I believe it's not theft, although it is a big deal. Before you grab your pitchforks, before you jump to the comments, I do think AI art is something we should take very seriously. I do think ideally it should be regulated, although I don't know exactly how or where that's going to go. But I also don't believe it's theft. Obviously, before we dive further, everything I say here is my own opinion. But it's not an opinion that isn't researched to a degree, which goes into the reasons I've been holding off in this video for a long time, even though AI art has been a very prevalent conversation for a very long time. The two reasons I've been holding off doing this video, the first is exactly what I said. I wanted to be well informed. This is a subject that I definitely wanted to be very well informed before talking about. I think in general, it's ideal to at least be somewhat informed before you offer a public opinion on any subject. I don't think you have to be an expert on a subject. I think if you only allowed experts to have opinions, we'd have very little discourse in society, and we already have that problem as is. We don't need it worsened. But I also think that if you're going to have an opinion, it should be somewhat informed, somewhat knowledgeable, and to that end, I wanted to have a lot of conversations with a lot of people, specifically with people who believe that AI art is theft and who view it more strongly than I do, so that I can get those counter arguments, those counter opinions. And I've had this conversation several times. I've gotten on phones, on calls with other people, both people I know personally and just literally people from the audience who know more about this, or not necessarily know more, but have different opinions about this, to try to get their take, because I do want to walk in informed. I have not yet been convinced that AI art is theft, although I will extend on this video as well. If you are someone who believes otherwise and you want to have a direct conversation with me, email me. My email's in the bottom of every single video description. Depending on how many people email me, I'm happy to hop on a call with them, have the conversation out. I can't do it with everyone, but if I get a handful of people, yeah, I'll hop on a call with you. I'll hash it out. I want to hear the opposing viewpoints, because everything I've seen so far, I haven't found convincing yet. Although again, before those pitchforks come out, it doesn't mean I don't think AI art is something we need to take seriously. It just means I don't believe it's theft. And I will have timestamps to every section of this video, because there'll be a lot of sections to go over, and I don't have cliff notes here. I don't have cliff notes to go over. I just have my own thoughts and opinions that have been developed more and more over the past year plus, and I'm just going to ramble. I'm just going to ramble about the way these thoughts and opinions go wherever it takes us. So let's start with my initial hypothesis. Oh, the second reason. The second reason I've been holding off doing this video is the knowledge, and this one, unfortunately, this reason is still present, but I don't believe we shut down conversations, so I'm having it nonetheless. The knowledge that it is easy for me to get up here on video and have a conversation where I tell you that AI art is not theft, and I don't believe it should be something that's completely shut down, and I do take it seriously, but it's not like a full-on don't have AI art. And it's very easy for me to get up here and have that opinion while there are real artists who are wondering if their livelihood is at threat, while there are real artists looking at the industry and wondering what their jobs are going to look like several years from now. And I'm not immune, I'm not cavalier to that pain and that worry and that fear. And I'm hesitant to be like, hey, by the way, here's my opinion, to add fuel to the fire of that fear. And I'm not an ally, I'm an enemy. Because like most conversations that I ever tackle on this channel, I'm very middle of the road. I think that there's always things to take into account on both sides. Once upon a time, I got accused of fence sitting by an audience member, and I hear that, but I don't fence sit because I don't want to take a strong opinion. I take middle of the road opinions because I think that there's so often good reasons to have middle of the road opinions. There's things on both sides that make conversations nuanced and complicated, and I'm not here to just grab a pitchfork on either side of the aisle on any conversation just for the sake of having a strong opinion. I have very strong opinions, and those strong opinions are usually, this is complicated, life is complicated, welcome to society, welcome to life, welcome to everything. It's usually not black and white. Now that we're a few minutes into the video, let's start with my initial hypothesis. AI art is not theft. At best, it is maybe theft. And maybe theft is a very different conversation than actual theft. You see, the nature of theft, going back, and theft has kind of three phases we're going to work through here, because there's theft, there's copyright, which we kind of acknowledge as theft with an asterisk, or at least I have the asterisk, and then there's AI art. And there are three different tiers here. The basic premise of theft, the very basic premise, the original premise is you have a cookie, I take that cookie, you no longer have the cookie, I stole the cookie. That is theft by every reasonable metric of society. And no, we're not getting into that I borrow the cookie, was I allowed to? But if you didn't want me to take the cookie, and I took the cookie without permission, without thinking I had permission, and I just took the cookie from you, I have stolen the cookie from you. We all agree this is theft. I don't think there's any real room for debate here. I guess you could argue in a purely socialist society, maybe your cookie is really my cookie. We could make some weird arguments. Most of us, 99.7% of us agree that it's theft. For clarity's sake, and so that I don't get sued, that 99.7 is a number I made up for illustrative purposes. It is not based off of any data. That's the most basic version of theft. The next tier down is copyright. Copyright is the idea of intellectual property, intellectual theft, where I create something, you steal that thing from me, and now because of that, I still have the thing. This is a digital product. I still have the thing. You haven't taken it from me, but now it's harder for me to sell that thing. Copyright is already complicated as to whether it's theft, because when you think about it, copyright is kind of a self-perpetuating circle. The only reason copyright is theft is because we created a law that stops you from taking the thing, and now that the law is created, I have denied you revenue. If we didn't create the law, I would just take the thing, and I haven't denied you revenue. But you should have bought it from me. Why? Who says? Based on what? There isn't a rule in place that says you should buy it from me. The concept of theft is I take the thing from you, you no longer have the thing. That is how theft starts. Copyright is a different category of anything in which I create a thing. I would like to maintain ownership of the thing. I would like to be able to sell copies of the thing. And in order to do so, I have to stop you from taking copies of the thing without paying me, even though it's not technically theft under the original description of what theft would be. Rather, it is a potential sale that the law is going to create the need for the potential sale as opposed to purely a donation. Because you could argue it's just a donation. You could argue it's just something that, hey, I mean, right now, you're watching this video, right? Pay me money or stop. And if you don't pay me money and you continue watching this video, you've denied me income, right? Maybe? Really? That's not really how it works. That's not how it works. You can't just create a circle. Now, I do believe in copyright. Before, again, pitchforks down. Get those pitchforks back down. I do believe in copyright. I'm a supporter of copyright. I think copyright should exist. I think copyright is essential to the motivation and the incentive as to why we create things as human beings. If we can't create and sell the thing, then it can only ever be a pastime and a hobby, and it can never be the thing that we actually put our entire lives into. You have to be able to profit from a thing to incentivize creation, whether it's an individual, an entity, a company, a group, a pair, partners, whatever kind of category or classification it is. You have to incentivize creation, and in order to do so, you need copyright law to exist. I am a supporter of copyright law. Whether or not it's theft is complicated. It's only theft because we created the law that says you can't take it, and now it's theft. But that said, I think we still agree at this point, now that the law is in place, it's now theft. Like if you go over the speed limit, it's speeding. You're going over the speed limit. If you take a thing that the government said you can't actually take, well then I guess by now, by the new revised definition, we're at a point where we call it theft. That's tier 2. So we have I take something from you, you no longer have access to the thing. That's tier 1. Tier 2 is I create a thing, you take the thing that I created, you take a copy of the thing that I created, and now I can't profit from it. That's tier 2. And then we get to tier 3, which is inspiration and creation. And this is where we get into AI art and what AI art is and whether and why I don't believe AI art can ever be labeled anything other than maybe theft. Because what a human does, what a machine does, when a machine takes this AI art, they are processing these image catalogs, these giant buckets full of the entire interwebs, not the entire interwebs, big portions of the interwebs that have been scraped without consent of the artists and used to generate something that is a machine's version of what a dragon might look like. Here's a dragon. Why do we know it's a dragon? Because we've looked at thousands of pictures of dragons, we've merged them together, there's a little signature of the artist in the bottom corner that we left there as a remnant, and now it's a dragon that we've created by looking at 7,000 dragons and coming up with our own. That's mostly just a copy. That's what a machine does. But that's also what a human does. That is also what human beings do. Human beings take and look and process things, and they put it into their own catalog, and when I draw a dragon, that is now a dragon because I looked at so many dragons, I've lived the life I've lived, I've had the experience I've had, and boom, here you go, here's my version of a dragon. That is what a human being does, and that is what a machine does, and I will grant you that we cannot and should not say that humans and machines are the same, unless you believe we're all AI, in which case, they are. I mean, if you believe we're AI, then we are the same thing ultimately. But before, assuming you don't believe that humans are AI, then a human being and a machine are not the same. So when a human does it, when I look at all these pictures of dragons and I come up with my own version of a dragon, there's the argument, the hypothesis that I've added my own spark, my spirit, my innovation, my inspiration. There's something about me that got thrown into the art that a machine will never be able to do. When a machine does it, it is a fancy form of copy and paste where they're copying tons of different little pixels and they're throwing together, and their output is purely paste. It is complicated paste. It's not just pure copy paste from one thing, but there's no inspiration, and that makes it different. But that is a hypothesis. To say that when a machine does something that a human does is different and is therefore theft is at best a hypothesis. It cannot be proven or validated in any other sense to say that when a human does it, it's okay. When a machine does it, it's not, because machines are different. That is a hypothesis. It cannot possibly be proven from anything that I can see that makes it okay when a human does it. When a human draws inspiration from multiple sources, and when a machine draws inspiration from multiple sources, and they input something that is completely unique, a human does it, it is okay. A machine does it, it is not. It is at best a hypothesis that it is theft. It is maybe theft. And maybe theft is certainly not the same thing as actual theft. It's a hypothesis that it's theft. Now again, pitchforks down. I'm going to say that so many times throughout this video. That doesn't mean that I believe AI art is something we can take casually. It doesn't mean that I believe that AI art is something that should just exist rampant. I think there's already been costs to society that we will never be able to get back. I think that if AI art is allowed to continue, there may be permanent costs that change the way things are created. I mentioned already I'm a fan of copyright because it incentivizes the creation of things. It incentivizes creation. And if you don't have that same protection, if you don't have those same protections in place for AI art, the same risk is at play. There's a post from Gavin Brown, I believe co-owner of Roxley Games, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, definitely involved with Roxley. I just think co-owner, maybe not pure owner. I don't fully know. Involved with Roxley Games. His post kind of mirrored the way I felt about AI art. He didn't say a word about theft. He didn't say a word. I don't know his personal stance on whether it's theft or not, but he didn't say a word about theft. He just said that there's a cost to what AI has done. The idea that when you're scrolling through social media and you see something that looks beautiful, once upon a time you would marvel at the ingenuity, however it was created, whether you're using Photoshop, whether you're using, whether it's hand-drawn art, whether it's a photograph, whatever it was that you did, there's some sort of appreciation for something that was beautiful, that was created with some degree of human input. And now when you see something that looks cool, there's that immediate thought that enters your head: is this AI? Is this AI art? Is this algorithmically generated? Did a human being get involved in this, or did someone just throw a bunch of keywords together and look, now you have that cool piece of pie? Or if you're on Facebook and that endless doom scrolling, you have the I'm not judging, I do it too, you have those pictures that scroll by your feed of some hand carved, some woman next to a tree with a carved version of her grandfather, and a post being like, oh my god, she posted something, she carved it so beautifully, please like it to show how much you appreciate. And then you see 7,000 comments of beautiful, amazing, incredible, stunning, and that all of it seems like complete and total AI gibberish fodder, or whatever it is. There's a degree of loss in this world. There's a degree of loss that we've had, the fact that now that AI is so prevalent, it is hard to simply look at something and appreciate it without in the back of your head wondering, is this something human created that I'm appreciating? Or is it just gibberish that's being thrown out and rolled to the masses that we'll never really know where human ingenuity began and ended, and where a machine and its pixels and algorithms took over? Because there is, I think for you, for me, well, it's for sure for me, possibly for you, there is an appreciation, probably for you, there's an appreciation for the work and talent that goes into creating something. And as much as I can look at something algorithmically generated and I can think it looks good, I absolutely can. Not all AI art. There's this instinct to label anything algorithmically generated as garbage and not looking good and looking terrible and whatever it is. But that's not always true. That's absolutely not true. There are times where AI art does look bad. There are times where the remnants are there. There's times where it's obvious. There's times where it feels like something a machine would pump out. And then there's times where it looks great. There's times where you don't know the difference. There's a video, we're getting off of tangents here, but there's a video, I see if I can find it, from Rocket Academy, is that what it's called? Rocket something? I don't know. This channel used to be very, very popular and then just started doing things privately. But there's a video about the nature of CGI and bad CGI versus good CGI. And there's this instinct to label things as bad CGI because the truth is you only see bad CGI. You never actually see good CGI. That's because it's good CGI. When it comes to AI art, the same is true. Bad AI art is easy to see. Bad AI art is easy to label. Good AI art is harder to label as such, and good AI art almost always has an extra level of human touch. And this is where we also get into the nuances, in my opinion, because I do believe that AI art should be regulated because of the cost to society. I don't believe that all AI art should inherently be banned because I think AI art is a tool. AI art can be, not exclusively, I think it can be a tool like many other tools that were at different points in time labeled as problematic or not something real. There were points where digital photography was labeled as not real photography. There were points where Photoshop and photo editing meant that the original photo wasn't real. And these are things that we accept nowadays as part and parcel of the process used. There have been so many different things utilized in so many different industries that when they first came out were labeled as cheats, as hacks, as not real. There are so many different segments of, I remember if you go back to Walt Disney, when he first mortgaged his home to go ahead and create Walt Disney, he was labeled as nobody would actually want to watch an animated video because it's not real. That was like a label at the time, and now look at us. Things evolve, society evolves, many things can be tools. I think AI art can be utilized as a tool by artists, and there's times where it is. I am not here. The point of this video is not to pick and choose where it's okay and where it's not okay. That is a much longer, more complicated conversation, and ultimately, we're all going to have our opinions, and they will differ. But rather to say there is a difference between generating a photo, generating an image, and then using it for a game. There's a difference between that versus an artist sitting there and using it as a tool. There's absolutely a difference. Where you draw the line personally, which one is okay, how often can you use it? Can you use it for prototyping? Can you use it for the initial image spark? Can you use it for, fine-tuning your final image? Where and how can you use it? Can you use it to go ahead and process a library of your own images and then generate art in your style? There's so many sub-conversations of where this will go, and I can't possibly dive into every single one of them in this video, but the important thing is that not all AI is the same. Not all levels of AI usage is the same. Is it okay when Photoshop uses generative fill? Is that okay, or is that not? How and where do you draw the lines? And for me, the concept of the line is clear. The concept. I don't have a clear place of where to draw the line, but the concept of the line to me is you draw the lines where you believe it protects the integrity of the industry long term, and that is very, very hard to define. Because at so many points in time, jobs were at threat. People have always stood to lose jobs in the process of ongoing technology change. Whether it's assembly lines, whether it's mills and sewing, and whether it's printing press. Nobody's insisting that we hand set the type on every single newspaper that goes out, because we do generally, as a society, believe in the progress of technology and in the way it can help us long term, even if jobs can be lost in the process. We are generally okay with that. And no different than when copyright came out in order to protect and maintain the desire for people to continue to create. I think that's true with AI art as well. I think if we're not careful, you will end up with an industry where everything can be algorithmically generated. The books can all be algorithmically generated. The games you play can be games that the rules were created by AI, the art was created by AI, the playtesting was done by AI, everything about it was created by AI. And the tricky part is, there's two different conversations and problems here. The first is the outcome even good? If you have a genuinely good game that plays well, works well, and everything about it was handled by AI, if the product is still good, that's one thing, and then you have to talk about protecting the market and the creation and the people. But you also want to talk about protecting the product. You kind of want to handle this from both ends, because you do want the actual industry to be flooded with good products as opposed to bad products. You don't want Kickstarter or GameFound or any platform to be 95% garbage generated by people who are looking for a quick buck and only 5% actually good things. So to a certain extent, you want to protect the integrity of the end result and the product. And then secondly, you want to protect the incentive to create. You want to make sure that there's always an incentive to continue to create things if you want those things that are created to exist. And this is where it gets so complicated, because drawing the lines is hard. And the problem is if you don't have regulations, and again, this is where, like I've said, pitchforks down dozens of times, this is where we are, this is the point we're up to. If you don't have regulations, you run the risk of the industry as we know it forever changing, possibly for the worse. And I don't think that's a good thing. I don't want every movie that comes out to be generated by AI, definitely not until they're actually very, 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 very good. Because again, if the end result is actually good, then we get into a more complicated conversation as to when do you protect industries for the sake of the jobs versus when do you protect industries for the sake of the output. You definitely want to protect industries for the sake of the output. Because if the output is at risk and we want the output, you need to ensure there's a motivation for that to continue. If you're happy with the output, if every movie, if every video game, if every board game, if everything you get comes out of this AI-generated industry is actually quality, it does get more complicated. I hate saying it, but it gets more complicated because jobs can always be changed or evolved or adapted. There always will be that, but it does get more complicated. But I think most of us agree that right now we still want people to create. We still want talent out there. We still want the human spark because it seems to add something different. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know yet. Time will tell. I watch Philip DeFranco a lot, and he likes to say on a regular basis, don't forget that AI that you know today is the worst it's ever going to be because it's always going to get better. It's always going to get better at what it's doing, and that is a genuinely scary threat to anyone. I think if you don't regulate the industry, then it turns into something similar to, let's say, eco-friendly board games, where you'll have the exceptions. You'll have the people who stand out as, hey, I want to be a part of protecting this industry, and so I'm going to go ahead and make choices that are worse for my bottom dollar, that might force me to charge more for a game, because I think it's for the good of the overall planet, industry, people, population. If you force companies on their own to choose to do what is best for the whole, then you're relying on the few who are able to or motivated enough to do that, or ethically feeling pushed enough to do it from their own sense of ethics and morality. And historically, in every conversation, that has always resulted in a minority. Not no one, but a minority. Your eco-friendly produced board games are a minority, and they likely will be. In general, if you don't regulate things, you're relying on the minority to enforce something while the rest go for a race to the bottom. And it's a race for the bottom that I'm sympathetic to, by the way, because if you're sitting there, if you're a board game manufacturer and you're watching all these companies around you do something and profit from it, and it makes life easier, it is hard to be the one withstanding it. It is hard to not give in to pressure. It is hard not to just jump towards the quickest, easiest way to keep your company afloat. There is always a drive to just cut costs where you can and keep things working where you can. And so I think that AI art has the potential for long-term damage to the industry if we're not careful. And to that end, I think that there should be some degree of regulation. Ideally from the government, as much as I hate to ask the government to get involved in anything, or alternatively from the people, from the collectives. You'll see a lot of collectives of companies and artists banding together to put out statements of how they feel about AI art. And not just how they feel, but often a degree of either, not allowing things on certain platforms, or alternatively putting together sources of a public shaming almost. And I'm not into public shaming by calling people out on whatever, but certainly the idea of having a group of artists come together and say, we are against AI art. I think there's merit to that. I think there's merit to a group deciding to self-police for the betterment of the group long term. The complicated part is I don't think, like I said already, I don't think everything is created equal. I don't think every instance of AI art is created equal. I think everyone's going to have their different lines of the way the tool is used, at what point in the process it's used. Again, a big one that comes into the board game space is for prototyping. Can I use AI art for prototypes? The final game, I'll get a real artist. But right now, I'm just trying to do a proof of concept. I'm trying to get you to enjoy the game a bit more doing the prototype phase. Can I use AI art for that? I don't have easy answers. I probably could go line by line under each version and instance and tell you what my personal opinion is. I think in many of them, my opinion would change over time because, again, I think the ends of the spectrum are always easier to define. The middles are a lot harder. And I think my opinion will evolve on the middles a lot. But I don't think my opinions will evolve on the ends. I don't think it'll change there. So I guess the overall point of this video is I don't believe AI art is theft. I believe at best it is maybe theft. I do believe AI art is something we should take seriously as an industry. I am unclear and uncertain as to exactly where those lines fall. I think there are things that are clearly better than others, but better than others don't mean okay, and worse than others don't mean bad. I think there's lines and complications and spectrums all along the way, but I do believe it's a serious issue. But I'm curious your thoughts. And like I said at the beginning of this video, if you feel you can prove that AI art is theft, I'd be very curious to see how. I don't see it, but I'm open to being wrong on that. And outside of that, we probably agree somewhat, but not necessarily all the way. In any case, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. This has been a complicated conversation on the nature of AI art. And as always, I hope you have a good one.